So that brings us to the topic for this chapter. What are objects? In all likelihood, you've been interacting with objects throughout the past several chapters. We've just kind of glossed over them and we promise to come back to them later. Well, later is now. Objects are custom data types that you get to create. We usually refer to the data types themselves as classes. Just like you've been using data types to represent numbers and letters and strings of characters, you can create data types or classes to represent people or places or items. In creating these, you specify multiple variables to be wrapped up into one data type. One of the biggest strengths of programming with objects is it lets us write programs in ways that mimic the way we think about things in the real world. We're naturally predisposed to think about the world in terms of generic objects. So, for example, you have the concept in your head of a person. A person would be a single entity that has a lot of variables about them. They have a first name and a last name, and they might have a middle name. They have a height, a hair color, an eye color. They probably have a phone number and an email address. These are all variables that we could wrap up into one data type, and we'd call that data type a person class. The class tells us what variables should be specified for that type of object. A person object would almost certainly have a first name and a last name, and that's the reason why we know that asking "what's your name" is a logical question to ask a new person. We know they should have a name because those are variables that we have in our mind for that data type. By that same principle, if we had a chair object, we would find it kind of silly to ask the chair, "what's your name?" To a chair, name isn't a variable that represents any meaningful value, so we wouldn't really ask that question.